Leslie Frazier. We had 3% of you give him an A last year, 26% at a B, 48% at C, 23% with a D or an F. And if we were just looking at the regular season, I would be giving him an A. If we were just looking at this past off season, I'd probably still be like in the B range. Like, okay, you got outmaneuvered in one game. This is kind of a few years now that in the playoffs, teams are able to expose our defense. Not necessarily in a position where I'm saying that we need to fire Frazier, but kind of the idea of like bringing in Al Holcomb, kind of tinkering with who's around him and maybe getting a couple other voices in the room. I do think that there needs to be some wrinkles and some changes on this defense. I think what we do defensively works really well in the regular season, and when you get to the playoffs, it's kind of a different ball game. This is kind of going back to my point being made with Kyer Elam earlier. I think it's when you invest that in that type of asset, you need to let them go out there and play. You need to let them make mistakes. You need to let them play free and not worry about, if he got beat on a double move, like he's headed back to the bench. You got to let these players grow and develop, and that's where it comes in on you as a coach, that when you sit down and you watch film Monday morning, you coach him up on what he did there. You coach him up on what your expectation is. You make him into that player through mistakes that he's going to make, and you try to get him there before the mistake happens. But that's part of the growing and developing. If you didn't let any players play until you thought they wouldn't make any mistakes, we wouldn't see draft picks play for 5 years. I think that's kind of an antiquated way of bringing players up in the NFL now. We see it every year, quarterback in particular. That used to be, we're going to draft this guy and let him develop behind the starter that we have for 3 years. Well, we've seen the trend in the NFL switch to, it's no longer setting your franchise back 5 years if you miss on a quarterback. They're going in there, they're playing, they get that first deal, and if you're not performing to the level that we want you in year 4, you're not getting the extension, and we're going to look elsewhere. And we see it across the league. We see cornerbacks coming in playing day one. Wide receivers used to take 2-3 years to develop. They're coming in making impacts. I think the NFL is just evolving into putting these players out there that you've drafted for their athleticism, their physical abilities, and you have to groom them on the job. There's no more waiting 2-3 years or letting them sit the first year to really earn that job. I think that's my biggest overall complaint with this current coaching staff is I'm not saying that you have to give them the position before they've ever touched the field, coming into training camp. I also don't want to see them with training wheels, throughout a whole season. Elam you had coming in to a defense that was number 1 overall last year, top 5, whatever it was. If you can't make up for a mistake or two he makes per game while he develops into the player that he's going to be, I think that's on you as a coaching staff. That's on you as a scouting department. If he doesn't work out to be the player that you think he is, but you invested a first-round pick, you need to have that player in the lineup, and you need to find out if he is the plan going forward, and if not, you need to be ready to pivot and move on to the next option. So kind of my little rant on the letting players play. I think that's something that we need to see from this coaching staff, this front office, this regime going forward. These players that you invest a lot of capital in, you need to let them go out there and play their game.